Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Welcome, tipsters, to our third episode of our Power Couple series. Today's guests are not married to each other, each have spouses who are impressive in their own vocations, but Dr. Christi Myers and Dr. Mark Newmeyer, core faculty members in our Townsend Institute counseling programs, have teamed up in recent research efforts surrounding self-care, resilience, and allostatic load.
It is really unbelievable, Ashlie, and what began as conversations on the running trail has now become the foundation for research articles and a future book. They use this research and model in their teaching of our counseling students, as well as in their own private practices in their respective communities. This episode is perfect for counseling practitioners, as well as anyone who senses an imbalance in areas of their life. Listen in for tips to help rebalance your load, to help live a healthier and more grounded life. And you know what? It might just lead to your first 50K run, or maybe not. Let's get started.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We have a packed room here in our podcast recording studio on the campus of Concordia University, Irvine.
But we're not violating fire safety standards.
No, I think we're under capacity.
Yeah,
under
we're right
capacity. No, Gilbert and I are here today. We are excited to be joined by our friends and colleagues, two doctors and professors in our counseling side of the Townsend Institute, Dr. Mark Newmeyer and Dr. Christi Myers. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us here today. We're excited to get into a little bit more about research and this outline of what may become a book here in the near future. But before we get into that nitty-gritty, share with us a little bit about kind of your brief histories in the counseling field and what eventually brought you here to the Townsend Institute at Concordia. So, Mark, let's start with you.
Yeah, so, I think I'll start off and just say that I love my Lord and I love the field of counseling that He's called me to.
Yeah.
And so along my journey, I was a mental health counselor for approximately 10 years. Mm-hmm. And there was just something that I needed to do that was more. Mm-hmm. And that eventually led me back to get my doctorate in counselor education and supervision. And, really, as I was doing that journey to become a counselor educator, I fell in love with research. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with just some aspects of counseling that just were not on my radar at the time. And I was quite honestly, after my doctorate, I was floundering a little bit in what I was going to do with myself.
Yeah. What now?
I got my doctorate. I'm kind of in between things. I'm the primary parent while my wife was working a busy medical practice, and I was adjuncting. I was doing some part-time clinical work, and it's just great how you have these journals that come with ads openings for faculty positions. And my wife was reading my stuff that I wasn't reading because I was discouraged about my career. And she goes, I think you should apply for this job in Virginia Beach. And I go, well, really? Well, we just built a home. And she said, yeah, you should really apply for this. So I applied for a job, a faculty position, and we ended up in Virginia Beach. And that was a formative time in my life. But I think a lot of things in life have a season to them. And after about 8 to 10 years, I felt that the season was kind of coming to a close, and we were thinking about returning to Ohio. And so I needed to look for another job, and there was an opening at Concordia University. And Townsend, of course, John Townsend was such a big influence in my life in the 90s. As a Christian, I was listening to his show. I was, I'd read Boundaries, and it had been a profound book that had helped our family. And so, the idea of coming to work at Concordia University and with somebody who was a pioneer in Christian thought and mental health services. So, yeah, I ended up here. And part of what I love about Concordia University and the Townsend Institute is there's just a nimbleness to wanting to think in a forward direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I, even though we didn't have a doctorate program at the time, I knew we were going to have a doctorate.
You did.
You could see into the future.
I could just see it coming,
Yeah.
and I saw the drive and the passion and the leadership. And so, yeah, here I am now, I think in about wrapping up my 6th year, getting ready to start my 7th in the fall.
Great.
Wow. That is awesome.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I like it. I like it. Now, Christi, how about you? Talk about your journey.
So I've only been at Concordia for about 4 years, but I've been in counseling and in education, going on 20. It's been a long time. So most of that was spent abroad, working in mental health abroad. And so was abroad for about 17 years in different capacities. Worked for an international organization for migration, working with displaced persons. Ended up in Japan and working with mental health in schools, and actually decided to come back stateside only because my grandmother was getting quite elderly, and I knew that we had very limited time with her. And so I moved back and was like, what's the next step? I guess I could go for a PhD.
Yeah.
Ended up doing
Why not?
that. Yeah.
That's right. Go out for pizza or go get a PhD, right? So,
And so was able to come back and be with her when she passed, and was also able to get my PhD, you know, and then ended up I got my PhD at St. Mary's, and then became faculty there for a couple of years, and then saw the Townsend Institute and decided, yeah, I'll apply. And I loved every interview that I went through. I had multiple interviews here, and everyone was just so soul-filling. And I was like, it's the right place. It's where I'm supposed to be.
Apparently, you told me a story the other day about our running connection, and that happened in the interview, and I didn't know that
Yes,
until you
and
told
so they do kind of a pre-interview with you, and so they're 4 faculty members will come together and do kind of a meet and greet over Zoom. And when Dr. Washburn had sent me the email, I had looked up all of their profiles, and I was like, Mark Newmeyer's an ultra marathoner. Oh my gosh! So I knew we had something in common. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we struck up a friendship
Yeah.
pretty quickly. Yeah.
This whole idea of mindset, resilience, unwavering determination, this research that the two of you have started to put together, which a lot of it stems from your mutual interest in kind of the running aspect. So talk with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, what gets somebody out of bed to run 10 miles on a rainy, cold morning, and train and do all the things that you do? And so it's probably not a one size fits all. It's probably a complicated answer for everyone. There's a story behind that. But, you know, for me, I had been a high school runner. I ran cross country. I was a collegiate tennis player, but really went back to running just to try to stay healthy after college, and had been running pretty faithfully, ran a few marathons. And then, you know, life came along, you know, family, children, you know, things like that. And my running was really pretty non-existent for a handful of years. And at actually at the funeral of my father, my best friend was there. And he said, you know, we haven't really ran a race together in a long time. So we picked out this goofy race that was called the Massive Medal Race. And just to finish it, they gave you this big, gaudy medal. And it's still my favorite medal of all my medals I've got from any race I've ever run. And it was a half marathon. And then after the half marathon, you took a half hour to an hour break, and then you ran another 5K. So you got the massive medal if you did it both.
Oh, wow.
Well, when you don't, after you stop running and you haven't ran for about half an hour, your legs are like stiff wood.
Yeah.
So we looked like Gumbies trying to finish up the 5K. But that became the beginning of kind of like, how deep can I go in the well to run? And you know, I'd ran marathons, handful of marathons up to that point. But then we got this crazy idea of like, just like the friendship of like running like further and further, and like, you know, eventually you're running 50Ks and beyond. And what was your question? And so,
Well, we were just talking about how the running really is something you and Christi have you know, joint interest in, but how that's not just a part of your personal life and your own kind of self-care journeys, but how you've brought that more into a clinical space, right? As mental health counselors, as counselor educators, talk a little bit about how you're trying to reframe that. I know you've been teaching Gilbert and I this idea of allostatic load
Yes.
and the health impact of that, and being able to identify it, explain it a little bit for our listeners.
Sure.
And again, for Gilbert and I, we need to know too. And then again, how that love for running has really kind of propelled this research project.
So I'm older now. I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm getting older every day. I realized that I used to run, 5-6 days a week, and I couldn't do that anymore. Like I just wasn't able to do 5 or 6 days of running a week. And you start looking at what the experts say as you age. They say, no, you can't do that. So you can run 3 or 4 times a week, maybe at your age. And so allostatic load really refers to this concept of wear and tear on the body and even your mind as a result of repeated chronic stress. And so it's really key to just understanding the whole person. And so you might, just the example I would give you, consider a person who works 10 to 12 hours a day, skips breaks, and rarely takes time off. And they may seem productive, but they're going to pay a cost in their body eventually. Yes. So you might see their high blood pressure. You might see them have sleep disturbances. You might even see them exhibit that by having burnout, right?
Yeah.
So allostatic load is really this chronic stress, and how can you manage it? So I can no longer do 5 or 6 days a week to be a competitive runner or even just a runner. I had to learn how to throttle back and say to myself, less is more. As I aged. And so Christi and I really started having a lot of conversations. I ended up moving to Texas, so a handful of hours away from Christi, and we were running some races together. And really, we started cooking up these ideas why we were running. Because when you're running for,
50K, you got a lot of time on your hands.
You come up with a lot of ideas when you're running along. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So we ran the 50K wild hair race together.
Ooh.
And this is where all of this was born, through a conversation over talking about allostatic load and cumulative stress and what that does to your body. And then looking at really this biopsychosocial spiritual care for well-being and how we can start implementing that and helping people find wellness. Yeah.
Well, and one thing you talked about in some of your research too is, I liked it. You said you can't put in a hard workout and then put in a long day at work, right? That is not going to keep going, in a good direction for you. What do you mean about that? You got to pace yourself, allostatic load. How does that all play out?
Yeah, so that's actually pretty research driven. So even when we look at elite athletes, we look at some of the special forces, like the SEALs or the Rangers, you don't expect them to go put 8 hours of work in and then go to the gym and have a productive workout session. Or conversely, start with a hard workout and then be as productive in whatever their daily routine throws at them. And so just looking at high performance athletes, and so if this doesn't work for high performance athletes, who it's not going to work for the average person to be able to grind in the gym for 2 hours in the morning and then go put in an 8-10 hour work day and then come home and be an effective parent. And so just managing your time is and what you do is really, really part of the secret sauce.
Yeah, and I'd just add maybe that dysregulation is really going to lead to burnout. So being very careful about that.
Wow, that's really, and a lot of this has stemmed from clients that you've worked with over the years. So this idea of allostatic load is going to appear different for different people, right? What their stressors are, perhaps how long it's all been going on. So you gave us some good examples, Mark, about, working 10 to 12 hours, not taking breaks, all of that. And then how would you walk a client? So a client kind of comes in, or even maybe it's a student, right? Our graduate students oftentimes are experiencing, I'm sure, some of this. How would you talk with them through this idea of understanding the allostatic load on their body and then perhaps those recovery pieces?
Right. Initially, there's a lot of different ways that you can think about it. One of the ways that I think is really beautiful that's happening just because of technology is we're all wearing watches on our bodies that give us all this information, and it's biometric information. So right now I can look at my watch and tell you how long I slept last night and how much of that time was in deep sleep or REMs or different, or light sleep. And so we have the technology helps us. Like people are wearing Oura rings. It's giving you instant feedback on your biopsychosocial components. And so I think we're in a great time where we can bring these things into play, into conversations with our clients, with our students. I'm a big believer in sleep hygiene. So Why Do We Sleep is one of my favorite books that I use with clients, especially that are burnout. And if you can't go to sleep at a regular time and wake up at a regular time, and if you and actually the research encourages you to be able to do that without even using an alarm clock. And so sleep hygiene is incredibly important. I think to me it's one of the foundation stones. As a matter of fact, on my own watch, if I look and see that my HRV, it's called my heart rate variability, is dipping, I know I need to get more sleep, and it almost correlates with a lack of sleep when my HRV starts to change.
Interesting. Sleep hygiene. I've never
Sleep
heard of
hygiene.
Yeah.
Well, and you also talk a little bit about recovery, right? And the benefits of recovery. You know, I am now becoming a bigger benefit of recovery I've seen in stretching. Right? I didn't do that, and now I've discovered that it's important to do. So. What do you think about when you talk to your clients, talk to students about recovery time too?
Yeah, I just finished up working with a doctoral student. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction on that, but I think it'll hit it. And he looked at pastors and their level of burnout. And one of the most important findings of his study was that pastors that had lower levels of burnout had it written into their contracts that they would have time off each week. Not just that the church board said you can have 2 days off, but it was actually codified into their contract, and that there were people that were saying you have to step away from your work for a couple of days every week. And so this idea of down regulating or throttling back, that can look different for different people, and obviously based on your occupation. But I think the ability to be able to step away from even what you're passionate about and what you love.
We want to know a little bit more about the recovery. And I know we had an earlier conversation this morning. We were talking about the different aspects of recovery. And Mark, I think you just alluded to a little bit the spiritual piece of it. Maybe talk a little bit more about the mental, the physical.
Sure.
What are those aspects?
So I think if we were working with a client, we were trying to build better mindset, we were trying to build better resilience, that we would work them through what's called the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And so the biological part of that is what we would start with. Are you hydrating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you getting nutritious food? We really want to start there, and then moving that into the psychological part, meaning how are they handling their emotions? How's their cognition? Biopsychosocial. And so are you having fulfilling relationships? Are you, making friends and being in your community? Are you volunteering? Things that are bringing you joy. And then the spiritual part of that would be, are you leaning into your higher power and making time for
your
that?
faith integration, right?
Yeah.
Opportunities for prayer, or what that looks like for you, right? Everybody's faith integration walks are going to be different. So say that one more time for our listeners.
Psychosocial spiritual.
Biopsycho, I like that.
Yeah. And so that's what kind of came out of our run,
Yeah.
is that we could use this biopsychosocial spiritual model in order to help people achieve more optimal mental health,
So if we
physical and
we
mental
think about
health.
allostatic load,
Yeah.
so like we can ask and work with the client on each of those domains. So they're biopsychosocial spiritual. So you can.
What do you think? What have you guys found when you've been working with your clients? Which one's the biggest deficit, do you think, a lot of times? When you think about the biopsychosocial one? Spiritual.
So again, I think that's going to be different for everybody. I think people forget the importance of the biological aspect. Sleep tends to go out the window with any stress.
Yeah.
So they're not getting enough sleep. They're not hydrating enough. They're not taking time to eat nutritious food. It's usually when we take them through a checklist over where's the deficit here.
Well, and some people almost take pride in that sometimes, like, I only need 4 hours of sleep a night or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's almost like a badge of honor. You hear
Yes.
people that are like, oh, well, I'm working the 60 to 70 hours a week. It's almost
Right.
it's an impressive thing. It's
Yes.
like, well, then you're probably not allowing enough other time for these other domains that are so important.
Well, exactly. If you're putting 60 to 70 hours in work, what's happening to your social relationships?
Yeah. Right.
What's happening to your time with your family?
Right. So some personal stories that you can share a little bit. Obviously, we've talked about your history and your love for running as well. How have you put this to use outside of maybe the two of you on your 50K runs together? Can you maybe talk us through an example or a story where you've seen this idea kind of play out with a student or a client?
Yeah. So I finally decided I was going to push beyond 50K and run 100K, which is 62 miles. And I did a lot of training. I was in good shape. I was all prepped for a race, and the race was a doable race. And unfortunately, it rained on the trail for days and days before, and it rained the night before, and it rained during the trail. So that we were literally within the first 2 miles. I was running in. My shoes and socks couldn't have been any more soggy than as if I had gotten in a swimming pool up to my knees.
Wow.
And several junctures on the trail, we were running in mud, water above our ankles, maybe even up to our calves. So by the time I had completed the first loop, I was already developing blisters on my feet.
Yeah.
By the time I got the second lap done, I was done, and so I didn't complete the third lap. And what made this? So I got about 40 some miles into this run. I can't remember, some 40 plus miles, but I couldn't finish the last loop. My feet were just destroyed. This was really hard for me psychologically because I had never DNF did not finish. That's the runner definition of and I had never had a DNF in my life in a race, and so like psychologically it was crushing to quit.
Yeah.
And Christi talked me through it. My best friend Marcus talked me through it. Time and actually applying the model, like talking, like there were just limitations I could not overcome that day.
Yeah.
And I just physiologically could not go that last lap. I was crawling to get that last mile. It took me so long just to even complete the last mile. And so you think about like that, like I was defeated for quite a while, but that determination, that's that goal setting we talk about, determination, that mindset that I know I can I know I can run 100K. Well, it converted, and eventually I found my rhythm again, and I did, less than 6 months later, I did a 12-hour run.
Wow.
So, which ended up being close to 50 miles. So it wasn't quite the 100K, but I'm back on my feet, and now I'm dreaming big, and I have a 100K planned shortly.
So you
Oh my goodness. Next question then, to kind of jump back into it, is what are some additional resources or ideas that you have for those who might be listening to this podcast and want more information on this idea of mindset, or maybe they can even sense in themselves, hey, I recognize that my allostatic load is out of whack, right? Whether it's my sleep or it's my nutrition or it's these other aspects. What's my first step?
I'm going to punt this to Christi, and I'm going to just tee you up on this.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of my running has been a very peaceful place where I do it on my own. I don't mind running with other people, but I do a lot of my running by myself, and it's just like that's my place to decompress life. Christi gets another set of her mojo is with people when she runs, and I think that part of the story for you is the story of social connection in running, and how that plays into your wholeness.
Sure. So a little bit about my running journey is I had never ran like as a child in high school. I never enjoyed that. It wasn't until I moved back to the States at like 37 years old that I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to run a half marathon. And I called my brother and asked him if he would do it with me. And he said, absolutely not. That is way too much running. He texted me probably about 10 minutes later and was like, fine. Yeah, we'll do this together. Yeah. But through that journey of us having to train for it, it has brought so much. It has brought him and I much closer.
Wow.
Yeah, so much that we're not running as much together anymore, but we're summiting mountains. We've summited the Tetons together, and that's really all of us encouraging each other to do really hard things, lead into more goal setting. But I started out that being my first half marathon, and then, gosh, what is this? 5 years, 6 years, maybe 8 years later. Now I'm head coach of a trail running team, and yeah, I have about 100 runners that are currently training for a 50K called the Rocky Horror, and we just started last week, 12-week training program, and it just leads to some amazing things. Yeah.
But I think the story there is that not going alone. For you, your health and your wholeness and your joy in running is that community and that connection. I get something different out of it. Again, I don't mind the social piece. My friend Marcus and I run races together, but I don't get it like she does. But I think that the gem there is, though, that the social piece is so big to our wholeness. I can go to dark spaces on a lot of different concepts until somebody else comes along and talks to me about it, and then I go, oh, I was sure making that situation a lot worse. Yeah. And I think that the value of a good friend, a value of community in a person's well-being, and that's why that biopsychosocial is so important, that social piece. And
making sure all those buckets are full.
Making sure they're full. Yeah, I went running with my daughter the other day who's in 7th grade, and I learned the value of trash talking because she could whip me now in running. She was running backwards for a little while like, okay, come on, Dad, you can do this. So, okay. As some people, they kind of feel stuck, right? They feel overwhelmed. They don't have resilience or motivation. What's one step you'd recommend to begin rebuilding, right? If they maybe were really good at one point in life, but they dropped it for a while, what do you think something that you'd recommend for them?
This happens all the time for us. Mm-hmm. So I guarantee I'm out here in Southern California, and I'll have a whole week where I basically won't run, or very little. Maybe I'll get one run in on a treadmill. I'll go home, and the mindset is shifted in just that week of, I'll go tomorrow. I'll go the next day. And so getting back in the routine is the hardest part. So so what I would say to you is the first step towards anything, whether it's asking for help for depression or whether it's running, it's that getting started, especially after there's been a break for us as athletes. You haven't gone to the gym in 2 weeks. It's really hard to go back after you've missed your routine. So routine is important. And if you break your routine, you've got to have some way to get back. But again, that's that accountability with a friend. And that's why I think the running groups are so powerful. Mm-hmm. And that's my take on it.
Yeah. And I would say, I would ask the person, what's one thing you could do today to feel just a little bit more like yourself? And that could be something very small. What could we do to get you headed in the direction that you want to be? Could that be a 10-minute walk out in nature? Could that be turning off notifications on your phone? Could that be calling a friend? But those really small steps are going to invest a lot. They're going to have compound interest.
I'm glad you said that, because when I feel like not running, what always gets me ready to run when I don't feel like running is just putting my clothes on to run. Once I get my clothes on to run, like I'm out the door.
Yeah. I would tell people you don't have to leap, but you do have to move. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I like that.
Wow, I like that. And I think too, I'll be honest, the whole 50K, 100 miles, all of that, real intimidating over here, right? I'm not much of a runner, but I like that you guys are using this as a vehicle. This is just the tool that has worked for the two of you and as part of your story. But I'm assuming that students, clients, perhaps Gilbert and I on this side of the table come to you, you can recognize that maybe it's something else for you, right? Maybe it's not necessarily the running piece, but maybe for you it's swimming, or it's nature, or pickleball. There you go, right? Pickleball. But something that kind of helps contribute then to that model, this kind of holistic wellness that does, again, look at the biopsycho, social and spiritual pieces of it. So what is next then? We talked a little bit about this outline. You have this fleshed out. You came back from your 50K run with these ideas. You put it down on a piece of paper. Where are you going with this model or these ideas next?
Well, this podcast is, again, talk about a first step. Like this,
there we go. We're launching it.
You are launching it.
We're at the very beginning, the launch party.
So when you pitched the idea of this podcast, we brushed off this stuff and we started looking at it, and just the joy in our eyes of talking about this again, we realized we can't let this set and be static, because the allostatic load concept has been out there, but I don't think anyone, and they're looking at it somewhat on a biopsychosocial, but no one is really looking at it, I think, biopsychosocial, spiritual, the way that we're thinking about it. And we really want to write a book that is, like you said, it's for everyone. Our running is our journey, but everybody has a journey in this biopsychosocial, spiritual continuum. And like writing a flexible book that could be applicable for anybody to plug into, to do something different in their lives that they're not doing now, or to make changes. What do you think, Christi?
And it's meant to be used as a holistic model. And so we are looking at multiple facets of your well-being. And so we can all improve in those aspects, regardless of what our hobbies are.
You know, I have to go back and just maybe put a pitch in for you two to start running.
This better be a real good pitch,
I
Mark.
was going to say, yeah, let's hear this pitch.
Yeah, here's the pitch. If you would go to see ultra runners and look at them before the start of a race when they're all milling around, they're just normal people. There are a handful of elite athletes, sure, who are going to go out and smoke the trail. But I'd say 80% of us that are there, we're just common people who just wanted to reach deeper into the well. And started with a 5K, and then eventually did a 10K, and then said, let's do a half marathon. And I think you'd be surprised. And let's pull back the blinds and see what Wizard of Oz really looks like. We don't really run for 12 hours straight. We run, we walk, sometimes we rest for 5 minutes, we rejuvenate. So it's about covering the distance, and it's about the journey of covering the distance, not being an elite athlete. And I think that probably defines the vast majority of ultra runners.
We've talked about a lot of different things today. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, huh? You like that?
I like
Oh, man.
Covered a lot of miles.
A lot of miles in this episode. But we end all episodes with a takeaway tip for our listeners. What is a tip you'd like everyone to walk or run away with today?
I would say that you're just never meant to run on empty. Yeah, that you need to be intentional about building a life that restores you. Okay, and so, rest is not weakness, and so recovery is not quitting. And building that really kind of one breath, 1 mile, one choice at a time is going to help you build resilience.
Yeah, and I'm going to circle back around just to you're not alone, and doing life with others is really important, and it's a theme. We wouldn't be talking about this idea of a book, this idea of the whole concepts that we are talking about today. It wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have been for the conversations that Christi and I have had, and I think you're just always better with others than you are by yourself.
Absolutely. Well, we can't thank you both enough for taking time out of your busy schedules here this week to meet with us. And hey, this is episode 1, but it sounds like we'll have a part 2 in the future when we have that book.
And maybe a movie.
Maybe.
Could be a movie.
Maybe part 2 will actually have to be on the trail. We'll interview you on the trail.
Yeah, on the trail.
I think you should come out and watch us at a race.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, that'd be great. All right, thank you so
guys.
much.
We appreciate it.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.